Broadcasting from the great state of Michigan. Podcasting across the world and beyond.
Across the world and beyond.
It's the Easyspeak Speakeasy330 podcast. A podcast that will go in depth on local and national news, ranging from sports to beer and barbecue. We've got you covered. Get ready for Ain't My Money, Not My Problem, where we'll make the picks, you make the money. Now, go grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and join Tom, Rich, JP, a.k.a. The Giant, and Drew. It's showtime.
We are back. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. We had an off week last week because I was on vacation, and our good buddy Rich Jasper was out somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, so he wasn't able to join us. But nonetheless, we're back tonight. Looking forward to it, although we will be without Rich because he's away on a work trip. So busy man these days. But we're going to get this thing going. I'm going to talk a little Jim Harbaugh situation. 4-game suspension, put on hold. What's going on there? Will he ever get suspended? And if so, how much? So we'll hit on it. And speaking of Michigan football, they're going to get ready to start here in about a week and a half, and actually 2 weeks. But what's their expectations? They're number 2 in the polls. But there was another rankings that had them a little bit lower. So we're going to talk about that. We'll do a little comparison with our good buddy Tim, the fellow Buckeye fan of the house. I know. Sorry, folks. But so that should be cool. Lions talk. Disappointing second preseason game yesterday. There's a reason to be concerned. Maybe some of the backup positions aren't as strong as we thought. But and Tigers, man, they just won't die. They're like cockroaches. You think they're dead, but man, they come back to life. But we're gonna get this thing going. We're gonna bring in our host here. This guy is making a huge jump tomorrow. First day of school. Really proud of him. Mr. JP, the Giant, heading back to school. Going to teach us a lesson here when it's all said and done. What's up, buddy?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Yeah, I mean, crazy world of sports. Football's coming up, but definitely excited for your new beginning. And coming live from what looks like maybe a dungeon of some sort. Mr. Tim, not in the speakeasy. He had some commitments today, but nonetheless, we're glad you're here. We had to question if there was something hanging on the door or if there was some whips and chains going on back there, but he assured us.
Happens, fellas.
Yeah, he assured us.
He's just going to hang the Pornhub banner next week.
Easyspeak brought to you by Pornhub. But got a little crazy background there with the Lions, and then looks like a tampon hanging off the door. But but we're glad you were able to come on the show tonight, Tim. We were, questioning if you were going to be able to make it. It was just going to be JP and I, but we're glad to have you. So
gave me a reason to figure out how to do the setup here.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, this is your first time doing it remotely, so and I'm not disappointed because it's about 100 degrees out in the speakeasy. I ain't got time for that. So let's get this train on the track. We're going to start off, like I said, Jim Harbaugh issues. 4-game suspension put on hold. The school agrees. The NCAA agrees. But this other group that kind of oversees the whole situation says, not so fast. We need to review this even more. JP, I'll start with you. You're our resident Michigan guy. Do you think that this suspension is going to see the light of day at some point? And if so, is it a possibility that he's looking at, more than 4 games?
Yeah, I think it was just the fact that it was supposed to go in front of a committee that was going to take up to 30 days to get an answer back to them. If it wasn't done before the season, it wasn't going to be done. Obviously, somebody pushed the right buttons and it wasn't done. I think something will be done going into 2024 about this. Maybe somewhere around a variety of 4 to 6 games, if I had to guess. I mean, I have no inside information. I'm just going off of what I think. I think it'll uphold at about 4 to 6 games, which will really be a lot more crucial for them next year as they bring in Texas.
I mean, do you think that came into play with this decision, being that the games that he suspended are, let's face it, they won't miss him. But looking in the next year, it's a much stronger schedule competition-wise. So is that more of a punishment that the committees may be looking at?
Well, I mean, that's hearsay, really. There's no telling. I don't know. And
JP's speechless.
The university isn't talking about it right now.
And Harbaugh's not talking about it.
He's not. Due to the legalities, he can't talk to it. There's nothing really being leaked out on it. It's just really all speculation at this point.
Did you hear somebody did ask him about it, and they're like, "Can you talk about it?" And he goes, "No." It was like one word answer, like no, but wouldn't expect anything less.
Nobody does awkward like Jim Harbaugh.
Oh, there's no question about that. So you mentioned 4 to 6 games. There have been rumors on X, we'll call it Twitter because I'm not calling it X, that this is the perfect opportunity for Harbaugh to do what he's always wanted to do, jump to the NFL if he has a 6-game suspension. Do you see that as a possibility?
I see that. The only way I see that as a possibility is if they go out and do what some people think they can do this year and win a national championship.
Yep.
Because I think if you go out and you win a natty, your mission's complete, right? And he's been very vocal about, having second thoughts and, wanting to pursue the NFL and win that championship as well. And being so close, I mean, that would have to eat away at you. So I think, if they can go out and they can do it this year, I mean, there's a possibility that, he can say, hey, I'm done with all the rules. I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Tim, you got any thoughts on that? If he goes out, if he wins a championship this year and he's faced with that suspension, do you think that's maybe ammunition for him to make the leap? Oh, did we lose Tim? Oh, yeah. Well, apparently we don't have Tim. So never mind. He was having some internet issues beforehand, so maybe we'll get him back. But I guess that kind of leads me to my next question. I don't know if this is a fair assessment, but I just feel like the NCAA likes to kind of poke and prod at Jim Harbaugh. Is this warranted, or is he the type of guy that kind of brings on that negative attention?
I think more so in the beginning of his career, with the Twitter antics and the music videos and satellite camps. And, he kind of seems like a guy that presses every button available, and he's kind of been a little bit more low-key and reserved here within the last few years when he started hiring better assistants and beating Ohio State. I think it's paid dividends to him because it was all show and no go for a while. And I think that he was kind of a target for everybody and fan bases across the country everywhere. But I think he's a little bit more laid back and reserved now. Obviously, he's not very humble and winning. He's shown that before. So there's a lot of people out there to get you when you're at the top. You know what I mean? You see it from the top teams in the country every year.
There's our good buddy Rich Jasper on some turnpike, probably in northern Pennsylvania. Harbaugh for president. That would be awkward. We already have an awkward guy in the White House and had one prior to him, so he might be more awkward than all two of them combined. Power issues, Tim. Oh, shit, that sucks. Well, hopefully you can get on at some point again. We'll be looking for you. But yeah, you do mention a good point. All show, no go. He was. I mean, sleeping on recruits' bedroom floors, which is creepy in itself. It seemed like he was really going out of his way to, be different than everybody else. And the results just weren't showing on the football field. And since he's I think he's let his coaches do more of the recruiting and it's worked for him.
And the world of recruiting in college football, it's a dirty game. Coaches talk, players talk. I mean, there's a lot of negative press. You know what I mean? A lot of negative stuff going on out there from other schools.
Right.
And,
there's dirty pool.
You never know. You never know who's turning in who, and,
Well, and let's face it. Why are these allegations, come to the foreground? It was because a former member of the coaching staff that kind of brought it to the surface. And so, which is a whole nother problem in itself. That's dirty pool. I just think if you've got a beef with somebody, you take it out in different ways.
Yeah.
You don't throw somebody under the bus. I don't know.
Frankly, as a Michigan fan, all the off-field Jim Harbaugh offseason train, it gets old. You know what I mean? What do you say? You don't know what to say. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like, you can't talk about on the field stuff, and it's every year it's just something new, and it's quite frankly, it's kind of old.
It's kind of like Aaron Rodgers every offseason. He's holding a team, or this year 2 teams, hostage, and it's more about him than the actual game. Same with Harbaugh. There's always rumors. Some are, warranted. Some are, him pursuing other opportunities. But yeah, I agree with you. I think, can we focus on the gameplay? Can we focus on the next season? And it just hasn't seemed to be the case here. So, looking at those possibilities, which it's a good possibility that there's some suspensions coming. Speaking of recruiting, it's a dirty business.
Yeah.
Are you looking at a situation where if there's even the thought of Harbaugh leaving, we're going to lose some recruits or some potential future recruits?
It all depends on if there's a complete staff overhaul, who you got. Michigan's always going to recruit. That's shown time and time again. Rich Rod was able to get people here. Brady Hoke was able to get people here. Lloyd Carr certainly did. Harbaugh. I mean, it's the brand, and, it's the biggest alumni base there is out there. The brand speaks for itself. It doesn't really matter who's coaching here. They're going to recruit here. So I don't think, not too much, no.
Well, didn't they lose a couple potential recruits in the last week, like some 3-stars? I think they lost a couple guys that were committed.
No, there's just there was one guy that went to Miami, and that's a whole different story. Miami has the real bag man at the paying the guys behind the scenes or whatever, allegedly. You know what I mean? They've lost the defensive end to Miami 2 years in a row. And there's crystal balls for a couple committed kids right now that are twins to maybe wind up at Kentucky, but nothing's final till it's final. Like I said, there's the world of recruiting is a whirlwind when you're dealing with 16 and 17-year-old boys. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, I mean, and especially in the day of NIL. You might get an offer from this school, and that school hears what the offer is and says, I can better that, and again, and we've gotten into that on other shows about, is NIL killed, college football, which, it pretty much has. It's taken all the traditions out of it. But we do have our dungeon representative back. Let's see if his McDonald's Wi-Fi from Drew is improved. But real quick before we get on to the next topic, I asked you before you went froze, before Medusa got a hold of you, if they win a national championship and he gets a multi-game suspension next season, is that excuse for him to say, you know what, I've done enough here, I'm going to go back and win the next loop in my belt?
I believe so. He's always shown interest for the NFL, so if he gets the opportunity to go and they suspend him, I definitely think he's going to take the opportunity to win or lose with the national championship.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, but I guess that all depends on if they win. And boy, yeah. I know there's 3 guys on this show, one being in a car headed to Pittsburgh, that would be really happy about that. So, but moving on, and we're going to stick with the Michigan theme. Got expectations. We got comparisons. Michigan football, like I said at show start, number 2 in the AP poll, but number 6 in ESPN's Power Index, which seems really interesting to me. They've got Ohio State at number 1 with a new quarterback, or who's going to be that quarterback. We'll get into that here in just a minute. Like I said, number 6 in this ranking, which is interesting to me. JP, what might be some of the reasonings as to why they kind of dipped so low in that rating?
I'm not really sure, because looking at Michigan's roster and depth chart, I mean, they returned pretty much all their key players from last year. Maybe not the glitz and the glamour of most college football teams these days with the spread offenses and the run and shoots and those kind of things, but yeah, I don't know. I can't really answer that for you.
Maybe because they've kind of fallen flat in the college football playoff the last 2 years. They don't have maybe faith that they can get over that hump.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is Harbaugh's best team. So if he's going to get it done this year, this is the year.
And they got the game at home, which I guess that didn't matter last year in Columbus.
Right.
And then I'll come to you, Tim. Ohio State's number 1 in this ranking. New quarterback, regardless of who it is this year, and I'll let you speak on that. Is this a fair representation of what this football team could possibly be?
They got the offensive weapons to do it. They're supposed to have a top 10 defense this year, but we heard that last year too with Jim Knowles, so we'll see about that. But I don't understand why they're number 1. You have a new quarterback regardless of who it is. Georgia is going to be Georgia again, and can't beat Michigan. So I don't know what Ohio State's doing at number 1.
So new quarterback. Kyle McCord was the projected starter. Now we have Devin Brown, I believe his name is. It seems to be getting a lot of attention these days. Looking really good in camp from people have said. One guy went as far as to say he guarantees he's going to win a Heisman before his tenure at Ohio State's done. What's going on in the quarterback room down in Columbus? Is there a competition, or is McCord going to get the job?
In the springtime, Brown had surgery, so it was kind of McCord's job to lose. And Harrison was also flirting with transferring to USC if McCord wasn't the starter. So I don't know if there was a little, make McCord the starter to keep Harrison happy kind of thing going on or not.
Yeah.
I just hope Brown taking the job from McCord is because Brown is the phenom and not because McCord and Brown both suck.
Yeah. I mean, you can make an argument that the Harrison talk, it was hot. Their rumors were hot. There was a lot of USC people even saying he's coming here, and Ohio State probably had to do what they had to do to make sure that he stayed. But for the sake of hurting the program, I'm not sure if that's the smart move.
McCord and Harrison were teammates in high school too, so I don't know if they have a real friendship that goes back to high school, or if they're just football teammates.
Well, I can assure you that friendship won't mean anything if McCord starts out and I mean they've got a tough schedule. They go into Notre Dame, and that's going to be a tough game. And if he doesn't show results, if he hasn't been pulled at that point, I'm sure there'll be grumblings for it.
The most popular man on campus is the backup quarterback.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Texas will have the same situation going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, not every program has a high profile kid that's, clamoring. Not only his dad, but his uncles, I'm sure, are clamoring with Manning there. That's going to be, Ewers is going to be a former Buckeye here. He's going to be on the hot seat. There's no question about it. And you're right that the most important, I think that goes with any sport. Your backup goalie, your backup quarterback in the NFL, they're the guys. So
most popular person.
Yeah. So you mentioned before, we know your affinity for the wide receiver room down in Columbus. I think it's safe to say Ann Arbor houses the best running back room in the country. So we're going to compare these offenses and maybe see why OSU's at number 1 and Michigan's at number 6. And JP, we're going to start with you. The running back room, I mean, take it away. You run with it because those boys can run with it, and we know that.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, it's well noted what Blake Corum did. He essentially carried the team through the first 3 quarters of the season before he blew his knee out. Donovan Edwards, you got to see a more electric side. He's more of a pass catcher out of the backfield. I think they're going to use him in a lot of different ways like that. I heard that there's a package together with both of them on the field, which is going to cause fits for defenses. I mean, you look at the back end, C.J. Stokes is a guy, sophomore out of South Carolina that got some run last year. It's very interesting to see who that third running back is going to be. Khalil Mullings is a guy that came over from the defensive side that they used for a lot of short yardage downs last year. And then a guy who really did good.
Pass? Didn't he make the pass last year on that jump pass? Yep.
Yeah. And then, on the back end, you got Benjamin Hall, a freshman who looked really good in the spring, who could add some depth. And then Cole Cabana, obviously a local product out of Dexter, who's kind of fits that Donovan Edwards mold of a really fast kid that can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he can give you 15 to 20 carries a game.
Okay. Tim? The running back room down in Columbus, it's nothing to, nothing to shy out against. There, you got some good studs down there. Talk about the room down there.
I think Michigan definitely has the better running back room, but I think Ohio State has the deeper room with Henderson, Williams, Dallin Hayden, Xavier Johnson, and Evan Pryor. We got 5 running backs that could start at any D1 program, basically, but none of them are on the level of the Michigan backs. Right. But I expect 2 of those guys to actually transfer at some point because of his wanting to play. Henderson has an injury history, so who knows if he's going to stay healthy. Mayan Williams has an injury history. Mm-hmm. Both running backs are good. They just have injury problems.
Well, and they needed, by the end of the season, they were digging deep into that depth chart.
They were on Dallin Hayden, the true freshman.
Yeah, but that's, and he looked really well. He looked really good playing, but, it's a good problem to have. But, I, unbiased here, I just think what we've seen prior to Corum's injuries and then what Donovan did beyond that. I mean, we were talking about a guy that had a wrap on his hand, and we weren't sure if he was going to play against Ohio State last year. And the rest is history. We know what happened. So it's noted, Tim, the wide receiver room loaded in Columbus. Talk about your guys down there.
Marvin Harrison Jr. obviously is going to be a top 5 pick, probably arguably a top 2. Emeka Ibuka is going to be a top 15 pick. Julian Fleming will probably be a 2nd round pick. Then you got 2 freshmen, Carnell Tate and Noah Rogers, both 5-star kids. It's just reloading the receiving room in Columbus. They have 17 receivers on the roster right now. So,
wow. But, yeah, I mean, Ibuka come out last year, and I think he was one that made a name for himself as the season progressed, especially when Smith and Jigba went down. They were kind of looking for, his maybe not replacement, but somebody to come in and put up numbers. And I think he really did.
And we've seen it the past few years with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, into JSN, into Marvin Harrison, into Mecca.
Right. Well, Olave was what, a 2-star, 3-star coming in, and we know what he turned out to be. He's down in New Orleans tearing it up in the preseason. But JP, we've got. Oh, go ahead. I was
going to say his coming out game against Michigan, he had 2 blocked punts and 2 touchdowns. That's how Chris Olave got put on the map in Columbus.
Yeah. That was 3 years ago. JP, I think the wide receiver room here in Michigan is a little more experienced. Cornelius Johnson coming back to play. He kind of had a big game against Ohio State, couple touchdowns. You know what I mean? His coming out game. Talk a little bit about some of the other receivers that Michigan has.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Cornelius. He's a bigger receiver. You've seen what he can do. Darius Clemens is a sophomore kid that's you're probably gonna see a lot of this year. He came from the mold of a DK Metcalf type body style coming out of high school. His favorite player, Roman Wilson. You've seen him go off in the TCU game. I think that's a guy that they got to get the ball to more. I think he's a threat. Then guys that are coming on, Tyler Morris is a sophomore. He played with JJ in Illinois before he transferred to IMG, getting rave reviews in camp. And they really like their freshman group. Carmelo English, freshman out of Alabama. He's looked good. Fred Moore, another freshman from Missouri. And then you have Samaj Morgan, who's going to be a slot type expert there for years to come from West Bloomfield. They say that kid looks pretty good too. Overall, I think it's a decent room. We don't have the Marvin Harrison Juniors of the world. Had kind of proved to not really matter lately anyway. But yeah, it's a solid room, and it's a young and up and coming room.
Okay. Unbiased opinion, obviously Ohio State, I think you could probably agree with me, JP, has the edge just from overall talent. They've got the better name and potential. So I'll definitely give them the nod. Tight end room. We've got a young guy that kind of showed up big time toward the end of the season. JP, talk about the tight end room there in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, so obviously, it all starts with Colston Loveland. Seems like Michigan's been putting out some pretty good tight ends as of late. I think Colston Loveland's a guy that you project to catch 50, 60 balls this year, multiple touchdowns. And then you bring over A.J. Barner from Indiana. He was team captain, gives you some depth. He's another target, good in the run block. Matthew Hibner, a guy that's been in the program for a little bit, I thought looked pretty good in the spring. That if they ever wanted to go to a 2-3 tight end set, they got depth there. And Marlon Klein's a redshirt freshman guy that redshirted last year, who's supposed to be of the Colston Loveland type, just putting weight on, trying to develop a little bit more. But yeah, I really like their tight ends, and I think the future is bright there at that position.
Okay. I mean, Loveland's got he's Eric All there last year, although he was injured, he didn't play much. Right. But then Luke Schoonmaker, who as the year progressed, he really looked really well, and then decided to go pros. And he's a Cowboy. They seem to love him down there. So I agree. Yeah. They've been putting out some tight ends. Tim, talk a little bit about some of the tight ends to look out for down there in Columbus.
You have G. Scott Jr., who I believe is going to be a junior this year. He should be having a breakout season. With a new quarterback, who knows? And then you have Cade Stover, who is really good, but he just can't stay healthy. Seems to get hurt every year early on. They do have a true freshman. His name's slipping my head right now, but he's been having a really good camp. He was the first one to lose his black stripe. He's officially a Buckeye through camp. He lost in like 3 or 4 days of camp. So his name's slipping my head right now, but hopefully he takes over the starting role as a freshman. But overall, I think Michigan probably has a better room just because that offense they run.
Well, I think the tight end position is probably it's the sexy position, it seems. And if you look to the NFL and I'm not saying this because he's a nice looking man, Travis Kelce, that's not what I mean. He's kind of reimagined the position I mean, this is a huge. These guys are huge, and they're athletic, and they can run routes, and they can block too. So, you're starting to see the evolution, which to me is one of the big reasons why the running back position kind of is lost a lot of its luster. It's because the tight end position is it's been reimagined and most of the offenses in both college and in the pros. So I think it's no secret, J.J. McCarthy, as the season progressed last year, he really came on. And, I just couldn't get the job done against TCU, although I don't think that was really his fault. But I think we know what we're going to get out of him. I'd like to see some more downfield. I'd like to see him throw the ball a little bit more, and I think the expectations are that might happen. JP, what is your expectation with J.J. McCarthy?
Yeah, I think they're going to go to more of a 50-50 style. I think it was 60-40 style with the run last year. He's got all the starts under his belt now. He's an experienced quarterback. You look around the country, teams like Ohio State, Alabama, Penn State, top 10 preseason teams that are rolling out new quarterbacks. So JJ's actually one of the guys in a big-time program right now that is actually returning. I think, as long as they can let him air it out a little bit more, as long as he can be more accurate on the deep balls, I don't see a reason why he can't throw for 3,000 yards and somewhere around 25 touchdowns or north of it. I mean, what he can do with his feet. He's going to cause a lot of problems. Like I said, you got Edwards and Corum back there. Should be a lot of layup easy throws for him this year.
And like you mentioned, 2 tight end sets. I mean, They line up 2 tight ends and the 2 boys in the backfield.
Yeah.
That looks pretty good for Cornelius Johnson or whoever else is on the other side for deep routes. And one thing I will say about J.J. McCarthy, he's kind of a throwback. In the day and age we have today where kids don't go to schools for traditions, he wanted to be at Michigan, and he loves being at Michigan. And there's no threat of him transferring. Very humble kid, does his, meditation before games. I don't know if that's, smoke and mirrors, but he just seems like he's a really good kid who loves the university and is a great representation. So I'm looking forward to seeing his development. I think I seen a ranking a couple weeks ago, and they had him like number 11 overall quarterbacks in college, which I don't know if I agree with. I think that might be a little bit low, but that could be fuel for him to say, you know what, you don't give me credit. Let me show you that I belong in the top 10.
Put it on the field.
Exactly. And I think he's that type of kid that he's not going to talk. He's just going to let his game speak for him. So, Tim, you talked about the different quarterbacks here, McCord or Brown. Just give me who you feel is the better fit for this program.
I would probably lean Kyle McCord just because of the experience. Kevin Brown has 0 game reps as a collegiate athlete, so just based off experience, I would have Kyle McCord. But I mean, Ryan Day's obviously a quarterback guru. We see what he does with every quarterback he's had so far, so I'm going to trust his opinion, obviously.
and I can hear Rich Jasper right now. That beard looking like Ryan Day these days.
Well, I'm working on it.
Ryan, fake ass Rip Day from Yellowstone. So I mean, I think the bottom line is both programs are loaded. Yeah. I mean, so says the AP. Michigan 2, Ohio State 3, or 4 in some instances. So I think really when it's all said and done, it's coming down to the last Saturday in Ann Arbor.
And we didn't even talk about the offensive line, the big boys.
Do we need to?
I mean, hey.
JP? JP? Tell me about the back-to-back Moore offensive line.
The back-to-back Joe Moore.
Yeah. Are they going to win? Are they going to win a third Joe Moore award?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think they can. Obviously, you lose a guy like Olu, who's a Remington Award winner, and then you replace him with a guy like Drake Nugent, who's a team captain from Stanford, already on the Remington watch list. You return Zach Zinner and Trevor Keegan. They're both seniors. Zach Zinner's got a chance to make some good money in the NFL. And then you lose Ryan Haase at left tackle. You flip Carson Barnhart over from right to left. He's battling it out with Ladarius Henderson, who's a transfer from Arizona State, who was, again, a team captain, 3-year starter. Then you got Miles Hinton at right tackle, who's a mammoth human being, transfer from Stanford. And then you look at, the depth, like Trente Jones, Giovanni Elhade, Ladarius Henderson, Jeff Percy. These are all guys who started a game. So you have your front line, and then you have your backups who all got starting experience. Harbaugh's even said that Drake Nugent and Greg Crippen are both starting centers. Crippen, who's been waiting his turn, who's supposed to be a really good one. So when it comes to the offense, I don't think we could have skipped this segment without me talking about the offensive line because, Ohio State's receiver room is so strong. Nobody gives credits to the big uglies, and I wanted to talk about that because their offensive line runs too deep, and I don't think there's another team in the country that has that.
So would you say that out of the last 3 teams, this could potentially be the best O-line?
This could be very well. Yeah, I think so. Like I said, adding Miles Hinton, Drake Nugent, Henderson, all from the transfer portal. I mean, you not only are you replacing the guys that you're losing, you're replacing them with pretty much upgrades and better athletes. So yeah, this one has a chance to be really good, and they're going to look really good with the guys that they have running behind them.
Well, our good buddy Rich Jasper always says games won and lost in the trenches. So, and one thing I will say, which I'm going to stop for a second and just acknowledge, you're a freaking savant. Your knowledge is just like ridiculous. Who else has that on a non-backed podcast? You're not going to find us anywhere but right here on the Easyspeak, and we are thankful that you're here. But Michigan's going out and getting transfers. They're not just getting regular guys. They're getting team captains.
Yeah.
You're getting the guys that are best at their position. And that kind of shows you the state of the program right now, that these kids they're already achieved where they're at, but they just want to achieve a little bit more. And this is where they're coming.
Look at the transfers on the defensive side of the ball. The whole offseason, who's going to be opposite corner, Will Johnson. We know that Mike Sainer still is going to be the nickelback. And they go out and they get a guy like Josh Wallace from UMass, who was highly touted by a lot of the big programs in the country, multiple-year starter, and he looks like he's going to be your guy opposite, Will Johnson. And then they go out and they get Ernest Hausman, who was the best freshman linebacker in the Big Ten last year at Nebraska. And he's behind guys like Michael Barrett and Junior Colson, and he's got a few years of eligibility left. And then you throw Josiah Stewart into the mix from Coastal Carolina, edge rusher. So now you're rotating Jalen Harrell and Braden McGregor, Derek Moore, a guy who I talked about from Maryland, who's going to have a big sophomore year. And a name that I want you guys to remember is Big Kenneth Grant. He's a sophomore from Indiana, number 78. He fits the mold of Jordan Davis. He's 6'6", 340. He's a mammoth kid that can really move. Mason Graham, returning as a sophomore, was probably one of the best players out of Serve White High School in that Southern California area. Chris Jenkins, they call him the mutant, first-round grade. There's a lot to be excited about here.
Yeah. And I get excited just listening to you talk about it, seeing your excitement. Tim, can you follow that up?
Ohio State don't have an offensive line. They actually have 3 or 4 injuries happened in a fall camp, so quarterback's really running for their life, whoever it is.
Oof.
We lost Paris Johnson, 3rd overall to the Cardinals, so we lost our anchor, a left tackle.
Yeah.
But their offensive line is by far the worst position group on their team.
And like in Michigan, Ohio State, they get the stars and they get the recruits, but Ben Herbert is one of the very few $1 million a year strength and conditioning coaches in the country. And you take those kids that are fringe 3-star, 4-star kids, and you turn them into 5 stars. And you see, especially seen it with the O linemen. Even like, guys like Mozzie Smith, that guy was an absolute freak show. And a lot of that credit goes to Ben Herbert.
Well, you think about it. They come into the college program. They don't eat right. They don't, they work out, but it might not be healthy for their position. So they get them on these programs that kind of get them on the right path. And he's been with the program a couple of years. And I think you can see the difference in just the lack thereof of injuries for the most part. You're going to have some injuries, but I think overall Michigan has kind of escaped the injury bug. Obviously Corum going down last year was unfortunate, but yeah, I mean, you're right. You bring up a good point. You see the players on the field, but nobody really talks about the behind the scenes, the preparation that it takes. Right. And if we can kind of slide off topic slightly here, you'll watching the documentary Quarterback on Netflix. Patrick Mahomes' workout regimen, his Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday workout regimen is absolutely ridiculous. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. You don't look at Patrick Mahomes as, he's not big, he's not huge. Well, no, this guy is strong as an ox, and the conditioning that he puts himself through, I think is the reason why they won the Super Bowl last year. High ankle sprain. Most players, they're done. They're not coming back at all, let alone coming out for the second half. So conditioning matters, and getting these players prepared for the brutality that is football, I think is a great point, JP. And I thank you for bringing that up, because not enough credit goes to the guys that aren't seen on the football field. So
it's like a lot of people, they look at they don't look at the broad spectrum of things, like a guy like Derek Moore, who I talk about, who's lost 23 pounds, who's stronger, faster, going into his second year, a guy like Kenneth Grant, who's 340 pounds, but, it's like running into a brick wall. You know what I mean? Or Chris Jenkins, who came to Michigan, who's at 300 pounds now, was a 220-pound defensive end when he came to Michigan. These things develop over time.
Sure. And their bodies are still growing, so it's the perfect opportunity.
Right.
But nonetheless, I mean, it's going to be a fun season, and it kicks off next Saturday, actually. We'll get into that a little bit later. But for Michigan, it's 2 weeks away, and Buckeyes are in a couple weeks away. Who do they open up against?
At Indiana.
At India. They're opening at Big Ten play?
Yep,
that's interesting. Indiana. I don't know if I like that.
Did they do that last year?
Yeah, they played Minnesota, I believe.
Yeah.
What is it? Nebraska and Minnesota are playing. They're starting the season. I don't like that. I don't understand.
Ohio State's first 6 games are 3 at home and 3 in the state of Indiana.
Yeah.
One Indiana, being in South Bend. Yeah.
One in South Bend, and then the other one to do.
Sweet. So, we're looking forward to this season to get going. We're looking forward to another season here. The good old Pontiac Pussycats. Lots of hype. You want to talk about hype train? There's a lot of hype for this team. The NFL certainly believes that. But, man, they didn't look good yesterday. I witnessed it firsthand. It was awful.
But I missed it.
Now, before I get too far ahead of myself, it was mainly – I don't think there was many starters playing at all.
No.
So, not really getting freaked out about that. But the question really is, Teddy Two Gloves looked god awful. He's only been with the team about a week and a half. I'll give him that. But Sudfeld came in. They led them to the only touchdown, but he didn't look any better. And maybe their secondary looked a little concerning. But JP, is there a reason to look at the backups and maybe be a little concerned, especially if Goff goes down? Or are we looking at a ugly season if that happens?
Yeah, I mean, the Lions are a good team. They're a good developed roster, but they're not a deep team right now. You know what I mean? Yeah. And when you look at the starters, like you got Marvin Jones, who's probably going to have to play some, given our circumstances. Amon-Ra, Josh Reynolds, who has good rapport with Jared Goff and Khalif Raymond. But you go after that, you got undrafted Dylan Drummond, undrafted Maurice Alexander, Trinity Benson, Avery Davis, undrafted Chase Cota, Antoine Green. That wide receiver room is a little thin, to say the least. And then even, on the offensive line, you got, Graham Glasgow, who's a good assurance guy, but yeah, they're in the stage of building a good roster, but they're not a deep roster yet.
Yeah, I mean, and we know the football season, NFL, man, there's injuries left and right, and we had a friend text yesterday, like, if Goff goes down, we're in trouble. But
yeah,
Tim, like, what is your concern level? Seeing, I get it, it's preseason, and I think Bridgewater will kind of figure it out. Annoying as hell, by the way, that he's wearing number 50 because they have to announce it before the start of every possession. Number 50 is the quarterback. No shit. But but are you concerned with, like JP said, the depth of this team?
Yeah, the depth will be a big issue if it comes down to it. Goff gets hurt or St. Brown gets hurt. There's nobody behind him that we can rely on to carry the team for a few weeks. That's any position on the Lions right now. JP said it best, for a building team.
Right.
I'm a big fan of Chase Cota. I believe he's going to make the team, and I believe
he played well yesterday. He had a nice return.
I believe he'll be the number 2 receiver behind Brown within a few years. So
Well, in a few years. Well, he had a nice return, and I believe he caught the touchdown yesterday as well.
Tim, I will say that if Chase Cota is the number 2 receiver in a few years, then we are trending in the wrong direction, my friend.
Yeah. Well, then the Bears are going to bypass us, and that's just.
Yeah, the Bears are nipping on our heels right now. We need to upgrade that position.
Yeah.
Quick.
But speaking of receivers, it's no secret, J-Mo, he's had some bad luck. Injury, obviously, blows out his knee in his last year at Alabama, which hindered him last season. Gets caught up in online gambling scandal, 6-game suspension, other things that he's been seen on camera. And then he gets his hamstring injury. But the one thing is, he seems to be getting a lot of hate these days, specifically from local sports radio announcers. I won't mention names. You know who you are. Good afternoon. I'll just leave it at that. But my question is this: is it warranted? And number 2, have we seen enough of him on the field to already throw him in the bust train? Tim, I'll start with you, and then I'll go to JP.
I texted it to you guys a few days ago with the word bust, and then I heard it up on a local radio host. Unreliable is a better term for J-Mo right now. Every time you need him, he's not there. It's a coworker that calls in sick every day, once a week. It's a coworker that's a flat tire. The coworker that don't want to show up. So J-Mo's just unreliable right now. Can't really label him a bust. We haven't seen enough of him. Unreliable.
JP, is his hate, I'll say, is it fair? And like I said, have we seen enough of this guy to even be able to kind of make that decision?
Yeah, I think we're just at the part of the year where the media is kind of bored right now and
grabbing straws.
Yeah, they're grabbing straws, and then the anticipation for the kid. He came in with a knee injury. You know what I mean? He's now he's facing a suspension. I think fans are a little bit restless, is what I would say. They're kind of ready to see the kid. I mean, you moved up to get him at 12. You passed on Jordan Davis. I mean, one to watch closely is going to be Christian Watson, a guy who was drafted at number 34, a pick that you traded. You traded 32. You could have had him. So it'll be interesting to compare their careers side by side. And you wonder, with the maturity issues and whatnot, if he has the work ethic to be a pro. I mean, Calvin's trying to mentor him. Teddy Bridgewater's trying to mentor him. Antoine Randall, it's like this guy needs a whole security team of mentors. So it's kind of alarming. I'm ready to see the kid play, though. I think that if they can be good and he can come back and contribute, it's just icing on the cake, really.
Who was the receiver in Dallas? What was his name that had all the glitz, but his outside activities kind of got him in trouble, and the Cowboys actually assigned him a detail to kind of follow him around. What was his name?
That's Bryant.
Des Bryant, yes.
Yeah.
Des Bryant. He reminds me of Des Bryant. All the talent in the world. But can he put that together? Can he get it right between the ears?
Yeah.
And because if you're not right up top, it's going to affect your play on the football field. But I agree with you guys. We haven't seen enough of him.
Yeah.
I don't think you could put a better group around him with Calvin, and Bridgewater is a very well respected player around the NFL. And it seems like he's going to take him under his wings. He had nothing but high praise for him in a presser the other day. So I think hearing those words of endearment, I think that'll go a long way with a kid who, let's face it, he doesn't have maybe the best direction. And having these guys kind of mentoring him should help, or at least you hope will help.
Right.
But obviously, those are names that we know. The Jared Goffs, the Amon-Ra, like you mentioned. JP, tell me about maybe a player or players that are under the radar that maybe we don't hear about too often that are going to be impactful for this upcoming season.
Yeah, I think in the preseason so far, ones that we've kind of been watching are the Okora brothers. They've dealt with their health injuries, their health issues and whatnot. And, I think that if there's no telling what Charles Harris is going to do. Josh Pascal coming in the second year has a little bit of experience, but if they can get some production off the edge from the Okora brothers, that would really bolster them. And then another one is Broderick Martin, the rookie that they drafted out of Western Kentucky, I believe, at defensive tackle. He is a big fella, and they need those run stuffers, those guys in the middle, because in games like Carolina, they showed you that they had some vulnerabilities up the middle.
Yep.
Against defenses, and then that's really it for me. It's the defensive players. I think all the offense is pretty well noted. You got your starters, and then you have a bunch of undrafted guys that we'll have to wait and see, right?
Yep. Tim, you got any players that you've kind of picked out as maybe some diamonds in the rough, we'll say?
I like the cornerback Starling Thomas out of UAB. He's done nothing but show out in camp so far. He's actually number 2 right now on the depth chart with Sutton being hurt. So he's an undrafted free agent being number 2 on the depth chart. He's either really good or the Lions have no depth at corner, which we know they address the secondary and free agency.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of Chase Cota. It's his time to shine. There's no receivers really besides Brown. Just a big fan of him. Like I said, he's going to make the team, and I believe he'll have an impact this year.
I'm waiting for the Tom Kennedy reset. It's only a matter of time before he's back with the team. Matter of fact, I think isn't he back on as like he's going to be on the practice squad or something.
Yeah.
He'll no matter he might be Aldi at Aldi collecting carts. But then the Lions, hey, Tom Kennedy. Yeah. Oh, we got a spot for you. So. I tell you who I like, and seeing him play yesterday was Stephen Gilmore, the brother of. Now this is interesting. It's like Stephen
Gilmore for the
Stephen
Lions,
Gilmore,
right?
And that's his brother is Stephon Gilmore.
Yep.
But the way they're spelled very similar. It's strange.
He's a rookie out of Marshall.
Yep, he had a pick yesterday, and I believe he had a nice punt return. He looks pretty good out there. And yep, corner is a concern for sure. And I'm gonna go back to the guy last year that only played 7 games, James Houston. He was a beast yesterday. It seemed that he was in on every tackle. And I don't know why he doesn't get the publicity he deserves. What did he have? 8 sacks in 7 games? Yeah, this guy 9.5 sacks in 8 games or something like that.
Yeah.
That's off the chart numbers for a guy that was drafted 6th round out of Jackson State. So
8 sacks, I'm sorry.
8 sacks. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
this is a kid that you can plug him in and he's gonna do well. And you wonder what those numbers would have been if he had played a full season. But you put him on the other end with Hutchinson, who I think is going to have an absolutely ridiculous year. I think that makes him even more primed for some more sacks. So,
and you guys are talking about cornerback depth. I was kind of wondering, when we were going to get to see Emmanuel Mosley. A guy that we signed out of San Francisco who played pretty good ball out there. I know he's coming off an injury and we have him signed for 1 year, but you're kind of wondering when you're going to get to see him get in there.
Yeah, I mean, he's a high-profile guy, one of the big names they brought in this offseason.
Yeah.
So you wonder if they're just kind of like waiting on him. They're not taking any risks.
Right.
And then they're going to kind of unleash him as the season goes. But it's a good point. If he's healthy and on the football field, I think that makes them a better team for sure. So moving on, talk about a roller coaster season. We're 80% done with the season. Tigers are 10 games under 500. Face value, that's nothing to be hey about, right? But looking at this roster and what we've kind of had to play with, they're a game and a half out of first place, or second place, I'm sorry, after taking 3 of 4 in Cleveland, where it's no secret that place has been a house of horrors for the Tigers in previous years. But Tim, is there still a chance at the Central?
I want to say no, because realistically, probably not. But with how bad the Central is and what the Tigers have done the past week and a half, we really don't know. I believe they can. They just beat the 2 teams ahead of them pretty convincingly. I hope so. I hope they make the playoffs. I hope they make a run, keep it entertaining into September. If anything, you're giving these young guys experience. You're in the hunt. You have a chance. You're giving Torque the experience, Greene the experience. It's better than being 20 games out and nothing matters.
Right. Meaningful games. Obviously their only opportunity is in the Central. JP, they're 7 behind Minnesota. And there's a team that, they've been just as bipolar as Cleveland and Detroit has been. So I don't think it's set in stone that they're going to win the division. Is there still maybe a glimmer of hope coming into September that they might go on a run, being they're down 7 games?
No, I think it's over. I think, if you're within like the 3-4 game mark, then you can talk about it. But we're under 40 games left in the season now. I'm kind of seeing what I wanted to see. I didn't really have a playoff expectation for this team. I kind of wanted to see. I wanted to see what the young nucleus of, Riley Greene and Torkelson were going to do. And then I feel like now you can add Kerry Carpenter to that list. And, for me, I'm still watching and I'm still tuning in because I'm excited to see what those guys are going to do. And, you're getting ready for the offseason. It's, so it's not all is lost in Detroit this year. I don't think a lot of us thought they were going to be in it or make the playoffs anyway. But I do think we're trending in the right direction. I think it's a little too late. Like I said, you would have to have Minnesota take a big slip and fall, and then you're talking about ripping off like a 10-game win streak or something. And I just don't see that happening. But I am excited for the Tigers.
Well, if you go back to and watch our shows prior to the season, I predicted them to break their American League record. So the fact that they are within shouting distance of 500 just goes to show you AJ Hinch is a pretty damn good coach. There's no question about it. So the news dropped yesterday that Eric Haase was DFA'd, and say what you want. It was a good story last year. He really played really good baseball. He just wasn't able to get it going. He had some flashes this year, but couldn't seem to get off the schneid, as my dad would say. So he gets DFA'd. And breaking news, anyone hasn't really heard, I'm not hooked up to the Roadcaster, so I don't have the button. But breaking news again, Parker Meadows has been called up and he'll join the team tomorrow. That's big news. That's big news. Brother of Austin Meadows, who unfortunately is on the I I don't know if he's on the IL or what list he's on, but he's dealing with some mental health issues, so he's unable to play, which obviously we want nothing but the best for him. But Parker Meadows is a guy who's been with the organization. He's kind of worked his way up, and he's earned his spot. September's coming up here in a week, which means the roster expands. September call-ups.
Yep.
Is this the right opportunity to bring some more potential talent up to the big team to get experienced in, I'll quote Jim Price, in with the big buildings? Is this an opportunity now to bring up the Malloys or the Colt Keiths? And I do understand Keiths kind of had a downslope, but could bringing him in for the last month of the season get some good experience that he could take, and then maybe, who knows, next year he can join the team. JP, what do you think about the opportunity of some of these Toledo guys moving their way up and getting some experience?
Yeah, with Colt Keith, I mean, he's seen 148 at bats in the minors. He's only batting .257. He's got 6 homers. He is 22. I mean, you think about guys getting called up 23, 24. You want to see a guy in the big leagues at some point. I don't think he's ready. You look at Parker Meadows. He's seen more at bats than anybody this year. He's got 19 homers, 65 RBIs. He looks, obviously he looks the bill of a major leaguer. And Justin Henry Malloy, I think, is the only other guy, who's also got around 18 homers and batting around 300 that I think are actually ready. A lot of these guys are developmental projects. Tyler Nevin, prime example, is a guy who's tearing the cover off the ball in Toledo and has looked like complete ass every time he's been called up. So it just goes to show you the difference between the big leagues and the minors. You don't really want to bring a guy up, unless they're ready. You don't want to ruin them. With September call-offs coming and the roster is expanding, obviously, it gives you a chance to get some at-bats. I believe that they're out of the playoff contention. I think that they believe that, without saying that officially. So why not get some of these guys going? Justin Henry Malloy is a guy who's a corner infielder who can play third base for you, which is a position of need, big time.
Yep. Tim, do you think that calling up some of these young guys is maybe kind of like a prelude to what the future could look like for this team?
I believe so. With Malloy and Meadows, they should be ready. So we'll see if they'll be ready for this season and then the start of next season. Colt Keith, like JP said, is kind of fallen off. Other than that, those are the main 3 I'm ready to see. I want to see if Keith can do it or not. And then Malloy and Meadows. The Angels just called their first round pick 43 days ago up. So that's 23, 24. You just debunked it with that.
That's incredible. he goes from college to the pros within a month and a half. That's unheard of in the game of baseball. But that too is, I think you're starting to see a lot more, and this goes with hockey too. You're starting to see a lot more draft picks that they're not being wasted away in the minors. It's like we spent this money, let's see what you got, and I'm all for it. I think it's great. So we're talking about the future of this team, and the future of this team as of late has been very, very nice, specifically offensively. Special Torkelson has really found his niche at the plate. He's been hitting the ball, tearing the cover off the ball. And I think as fans, we've been waiting for this to happen. And it's happening right now. And you pair him with Riley Greene, and like you say, Kerry Carpenter. And I know you talk about Vierling, JP, that you're a big fan of him. He's a good ball player. He's a really good ball player.
I do.
And he's somebody you want on your team. With Torkelson really kind of coming into his own, what does that mean for the future of this team? Obviously, he's batting behind Greene, which they're going to feed off each other. But does that kind of change their path in the future?
Yeah, I think you look at Torkelson. I mean, over his last 15 games, he's hit 7 bombs. only 9 RBIs, which shows you that guys aren't getting on, and he's not very protected. But he's been taking advantage of the breaking pitches, anything in the zone. I think his command and his approach at the plate has improved tremendously. I see Torkelson and Riley Greene as 30 home run, 100 RBI guys for 10 plus years to come. Those guys, and then Kerry Carpenter, who's been, nobody's been hotter than Kerry Carpenter. JC's cousin himself. He's been a pleasant surprise this year. And I think with those three, and like you mentioned, I really like Matt Vierling. You can put him around. You can put him anywhere. He's got a strong arm. He's a good contact guy. So, I mean, you got about 4 or 5 guys that can change the trajectory of this team pretty quick if you do something in the offseason and you pick somebody up.
And with the leadership of A.J. Hinch, it's definitely hope. I guess that's a good word. Tim, there's been, up until probably about a month ago, there was talks about Tork, like he's a bust, and what's going on with this guy. And baseball is hitting a baseball. It might be one of the hardest things to do in all of professional sports, because you're seeing different angles and different speeds. It's not something you can just jump on and be successful. So for him, obviously, finding his form took a little bit longer than I think most people expected for a first pick in the draft. But he's there now. Where do you think about Torkelson? Do you agree with JP that this guy could be a 30 home run hitter or maybe more guy?
I definitely believe so. He's shown us he has the power when he's on. What JP's had 7 home runs in the past 15 games. That's a pretty fucking good home run rate. I believe with Miggy helping him throughout the season, it's helped his development go a little bit smoother. I'm pretty sure Miggy's taking him under his wing, and I believe Tork's shown us what he's capable of.
Speaking of Miggy, for kind of the down season he's had, this last couple of weeks, he's really hit the ball. And that home run he hit the other day, albeit it was his second of the season, which is kind of sad, that was a bomb. He hit it 340 feet in Minnesota. But he's really hitting the ball. And I think that's kind of the team is following suit. He's really come around. His average is up. And I think the other guys are kind of seeing that. And obviously, he's always got a smile on his face. It's contagious. And he's a great clubhouse guy. But I do like what he did today in Cleveland when they handed him the guitar. Jose handed him the guitar, and then he put up his Dukes. I'm like, only Miggy. That's classic Miggy. And unfortunately, we only got another month of the season to witness that. And I think we're all going to miss his smile. But hopefully he'll be still around the program. But
you think he becomes some kind of coach?
Yeah,
Tigers or somewhere else.
I think he's just going to have a lot of money and drink a lot of tequila.
Yeah, I see him stepping away from the game, maybe being a consultant in spring training or something, but we'll see. But obviously, first ballot Hall of Fame. But JP, you mentioned a little bit ago about if they go out and get some pieces. Obviously, Miggy's contract, big contract, off the books after this season. They've got money to spend.
Yeah.
The caveat here is Chris Ilitch, it's hard to read. Does he want to spend money? Does he want to be like his dad? All indications are he's not like his dad. So it's been tricky. But we have a guy in Scott Harris who I have faith in, and I think we all have faith in. He's kind of groomed. He's been groomed with some good organizations, we'll say, in Tampa and in San Francisco. Those are two of the best in the biz. So I really feel like he's going to let him kind of do his thing. And with that being said, do you think they make some key moves, and at what positions?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're going to they're probably going to have about $50 million off the book. A couple guys that I like, and their position of needs. I've made no bones about it. They need an everyday third baseman. They need an everyday second baseman. And I really like Matt Chapman, who plays for the Blue Jays right now, who started his career in Oakland. He hit 36 home runs in Oakland in 2019. He's giving you 25 plus home runs every day. He's a veteran. He's your everyday third baseman. He's a pro. And then another guy I liked who's going to go on the open market is Blake Snell, a left-hander for the Padres. He's looked really good this year. 2.6 ERAs, on pace to strike out 200 batters. And you can't have enough. I think if we can bring Eduardo Rodriguez back, and you compare a guy like Eduardo Rodriguez with Blake Snell, those are two pretty tough lefties. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And not to say that's the direction that they go, but if that was my wish list, what I think would make sense, that's what I would do.
Well, and if you look at San Diego, they're not going to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
And it's no secret the money that they've spent.
Yeah.
They're going to need to cut some costs, and I don't think they can afford Snell. And that would be a great addition because he can bring the heat, and he's real crafty.
Yep. He's a fiery guy too.
Yep. And he come from Tampa Bay, and there's another guy. So there's a relationship with Harris. So that's definitely a possibility, and that would improve. Chapman, 100%. I agree with you on that one. That would bolster that corner definitely, and add more pop to that lineup to go along with Tork and Carpenter and Greene, who he's no slouch either. So, Tim, do you have any thoughts as far as the offseason? Will they make some moves to improve this team? And if so, what are some positions of need that probably should be top on their list?
Definitely a third baseman, definitely a second baseman. And I would go as far as saying they probably need a top 3 pitcher, a veteran, just to help these young guys develop. We have no ace, so to speak, to help these guys develop and lead the way. We have Erod, but he's not, a number one guy that can take everyone under his wing, show them the big league way, and stuff like that. So, a good pitcher, a second baseman, and a third baseman.
Well, I think you can look at next year. Hopefully they'll get Casey Mize back. So essentially that'll be maybe like a free agent acquisition, because he hasn't been with the team very long. So adding him to the mix will be nice. And that is the big question mark with Erod. Will he come back? And he claims he likes being here, and he claims his family likes being here, but talk is cheap, and he showed there at the deadline that, I'll go to LA, but I want 20 million more. And is he going to pull that? Is he going to pull that here in Detroit? Frankly, I think Detroit's probably the only team that would exercise maybe that option, because he's been a little up and down. He looked good at the start of the season, and he's kind of leveled out since. So, that'll be interesting to see. I hope they don't make the mistake like they did a couple years ago by signing Baez to a 7-year mega deal. And we all know where that's kind of come out. Hasn't really worked out well for them. So, but then again, that leads me to, I don't think we'll see a lot of contracts like that. I don't think a lot of teams are looking for 7+ years just because the risk is too risky. It's not worth the reward. So this offseason should be interesting. And of course, who's out there? The big man, Ohtani. So cha-ching for him. So
yeah.
But, you guys ready?
We're ready.
You ready?
Let's
get it done. Let's do it.
Get those betting slips ready. It's time for Ain't My Money, Not My Problem, where we make the picks, you make the money.
That's right, folks. It's that time of the show. Get those betting apps out. Get your pen or pencil ready. We're going to give you some bets. You're going to win some money. And hey, who knows? Maybe you'll give us a little kickback. But Mr. Dungeon Man, Tim, it ain't your money.
It's not my problem.
What you got?
I got two. I got a futures with the Detroit Lions. Dan Campbell, head coach of the year at plus 1,000.
Cornbread.
I'm all over the Kool-Aid. So
Yeah.
That's my futures. And then week 0, I got Notre Dame or Navy plus 20 against Notre Dame.
Oh.
The style of offense Navy runs, the running game. First games of the year, I don't think Notre Dame's going to be clicking on all cylinders, and 20 is a lot to make up against an offense like Navy.
Well, what did I see? The money line right now, according to DraftKings, minus 1350 money line for Notre Dame, plus 800 for Navy.
We've seen bigger upsets in opening week of college football.
Yeah, we have, but I don't know. I really like Notre Dame's quarterback. I think he's going to really elevate them a little bit, but we'll get into that on a future episode. JP, it's not your money.
Not my problem. Yeah, so we're not going to be we obviously won't be doing a show till after week 0, so I'm going to stay with that game. I usually, my instincts tell me that the Naval Academy always plays Notre Dame tough. But, Navy, they're breaking in a new head coach, Brian Newberry, a guy they got from Kennesaw State at the FCS level in Georgia. That's tough. And then you're factoring a Naval Academy with it. Sam Hartman, I think it's going to be a dark horse Heisman contender there at Notre Dame, who threw for a zillion touchdowns at Wake Forest. I actually like and I like Notre Dame minus 20.5 at minus 105. I just think Naval Academy, new coach, you're going up against a high-powered quarterback, big-time school, games in Dublin, Ireland. I like Notre Dame to cover the points. I think if you get it right now, I think it's going to go up.
That atmosphere, it's the Irish in Ireland. I mean, that's going to be incredible to see. I mean, clearly Notre Dame travels well, so there'll be a lot of, fans from over here heading over there. So that's going to be fun. Yeah. That game kicks off at 2:00 our time?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be exciting. Well, it ain't my money, so it's not my problem. And I'm going to stick in the world of college football. And I'm going to go college football playoffs. Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State. Plus 2,000 to all 4 of those make the college football playoff. I think Alabama's not getting a lot of talk. Nick Saban, he feeds off that, and he's not going to be okay with having another off season. So I look for them to make a lot of noise in the SEC. Georgia, like Tim said earlier, Georgia's Georgia. They surround themselves with weapons. I mean, obviously Stetson Bennett looked really good based upon the players he had around him. So, but then it comes to Michigan and Ohio State. I think they'll both be in position to, even the loser of that game will still make the college football playoffs, just because they're just so electric and they're going to have great seasons. And that one game won't define them in the end. So again, plus 2,000 for Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, and Ohio State to make the college football playoff.
So you have Ohio State winning week 3 at Notre Dame?
I can tell you more after the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, potentially. That's gonna be a solid game.
Yeah,
gonna be a solid game. So, all right, fellas, we're moving into the final chapter tonight. Some closing thoughts, and the man that I don't think there's any whips and chains or anything behind him there, or electronics, as JP mentioned pre-show. Got closing thoughts today?
I don't have much to say. I spoke to Taylor North's team yesterday before the South Carolina game. That was cool. That was a really cool experience. I learned I'm not much of a speaker in front of a lot of 14-year-olds staring at me.
Yeah.
Probably the most nervous I've ever been. But see those kids appreciate me. Actually, the parents, more than anything, appreciated me talking to him. So it was cool. It was a cool experience.
Well, explain why you were speaking to that team.
So when I went through chemo in 21, this time of the year, there's not much to watch on TV. And, I was just watching Little League Baseball, and I watched a team from Taylor, Michigan, right down the street. Literally the city I was in the hospital, went to the Little League World Series. So, having those kids, locally was bringing a smile to my face at my darkest times.
Yeah. And they asked you to come in and tell them what they meant to you. And because
before yesterday, those kids had no idea what they did, or I pretty much just told them, "You guys helped me in my fight. You guys never give up in your fight." And they actually blew a 2-0 lead yesterday, and they showed that grind and grit, and they pulled it off, and then they lost 6-0 in the World Championship.
But they won the U.S. Championship.
They won the U.S. Championship again.
Yep. So that's pretty cool, and I think we need to get a little bit further into that on a future episode of what you went through. JP, final closing thoughts.
Yeah, so tonight I'm like a kid all over again, waiting on their first day of school. Tomorrow I start a new journey at Lawrence Tech, the Broadcast Media Arts program, where I've kind of found a passion in talking sports and listening to it and watching it, and it's kind of been my life for a long time, and it's the thing that I put off for a long time. And I kind of have the support group and the means to do it now. Not really the means to do it, but we're going to make it work. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited and nervous at the same time. And it's just to see where it will be next year. Will be at this time will be interesting to say the least. So, my final thought is if, you got something that you've been wanting to do and you've been holding back and pushing back and putting it off, I encourage everybody to go out there and at least try it,
Great point, JP. And my closing thoughts, I'll keep it brief because the Giant, we won't go into it, but next Saturday is the second annual Speakeasy 330 Fantasy Football Draft. We're looking forward to that. All four of us in the show are represented, along with 6 other people. So look forward to the recap of that next Sunday's show, where we're going to dive deep into Lions preview with the Chiefs Week 1 game coming up that following Thursday. So, and more college football talk. And everybody get ready, because this show's about to take off based on our football knowledge. With the football season coming up, there's always so much to look forward to and talk about. So you're not going to want to miss future episodes starting next week. So look forward to that. And again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Everybody that listens on the Spotify and Apple Podcasts, we really appreciate it. Go like and follow all our socials. We're on everything. We like to post all fun content. So we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Again, next Sunday, the recap of the draft. I'm sure there'll be a lot of shit talking for that. But we'll see you guys all next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the Easyspeak at Speakeasy330 podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Check us out on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We look forward to sharing another cold one with you right here next time for another fun-filled episode. Cheers.